The Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro delivered a speech regarding the 30th anniversary of the civilian and military rebellion on February 4th, 1992. Peru's President Pedro Castillo announced he will reconstruct his cabinet, meaning official deposition of the repudiated new Prime Minister Hector Valero Pinto. The 35th summit of the African Union began this Saturday in Addis Ababa, the capital city of Ethiopia, under the theme Developing Resilience and Nutrition in Africa, Enhancing Human Capital, Social and Economic Development. It will be the first face-to-face meeting of the conclave after 2 years of the pandemic. Hi, this is From the South. I'm news anchor Diego Martin from the TeleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. So Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro delivered a speech regarding the 30th anniversary of the military and civilian uprising of February 4th, 1992. On that date, Hugo Chavez made his first appearance in the political life of the nation when he led a group of troops in an attempt to oust the governing elite at the moment. Historians regard the actions as a military failure, although they served as a much-needed morale boost for many people who desired a change in Venezuela's political project and better possibilities of social equality. President Nicolas Maduro said to reflect upon the significance of the events that transpired on that date and thank the support, loyalty, and bravery of the people who bet on the Bolivarian project initiated and led by Chavez, who now inspires many voices of the new generation of Venezuelans. Maduro likewise expressed his commitment to the people of Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro recalled in his speech how Hugo Chavez rejected violence and decided to take the democratic and peaceful way for Venezuela.
Enough. Never more a military rebellion. Stop. Never more weapons and violence. We will find a peaceful way for a revolutionary revolution, Bolivarian revolution, that opens the roads of the 21st century to Venezuela.
The president of the South American nation talked about how the past has influenced the future of Venezuela and described the kind of country it should be.
For transition to socialism, because it is socialism, our socialism, the future of a homeland in peace, harmonic, solidary, prosperous, and happy. That's the course. 2030. We're working there. 30 years have passed. And as Commander Ariel Cárdenas said, intense, quick. How many stages we have lived. And 30 years later, with the wondrous spirit of the Bolivarian rebirth of that day, today we can say, in a civic military union, 30 years later, here is the people of Bolivar, victorious in revolution, towards new attitudes, towards a new time.
And Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro invited Francisco Javier Arias Cárdenas, one of the commanders of February 4th, to say a few words of reflection to the people of Venezuela.
To hear the Commander Chavez now is like to hear the commitment we have now. And it is not the commitment for soldiers only. It's for the soldiers and the people. It's for the great civic military unit. It's for the people of Venezuela. It's like Cesar used to say, the people is made soldier, the people who loves, that feels, that struggles, the people that are always hopeful. And our commitment is in each space we are, that our responsibilities is to fight every day for the service, in service. As Chavez used to say, to melt in the service to the others.
And in February 4th, 1992, the uprising led by Commander Hugo Chavez changed the course of Venezuela. A sentence marks the history of the Caribbean country, that is, for the time being. It is a living experience that they interpret as a continuous construction of a better society and makes that date be considered and celebrated as a day of national dignity.
Artistic expression tells part of the history of a country. Music that vindicates a civilian military rebellion against a system that crushed the most impoverished. The uprising failed.
Compañeros, lamentablemente, por ahora los objetivos que nos planteamos no fueron logrados en la ciudad capital. Ya es tiempo de reflexionar y vendrán nuevas situaciones y el país tiene que enrumbarse definitivamente hacia un destino mejor.
But the phrase of Hugo Chavez, leader of the uprising, remain in the memory. For many Venezuelans, these words are more current than ever. They imply to keep on building. Nobody in this country knows the fact of that time. Everybody knows the history of this barracks, where the rebels of that 1992 were. Now in it, Hugo Chavez rests.
Viendo todo esto, habían unos hombres de mentes libres dentro del...
Seeing all this, there were some men with free minds inside the barracks, and they organized themselves and became rebels because of everything that was happening to the people. Because they come from the people. That army comes from the people. That is why today there is a great rebellion between people and soldier and people. That great union that we have had since February 4th.
Pueblo y soldado, soldado y pueblo. Esa gran unión que hemos tenido a partir de ese 4 de febrero.
February 4 is now the day of national dignity. Dignity, experts say, because that military movement made a difference with the existing political class of that period.
Commander Chavez first took responsibility for that military uprising that had never happened in this country. In the past, the leaders we had never taken responsibility for the events. I am the one responsible for this Bolivarian military rebellion, and I present Bolivar, who was in the status petrified, and then I launched the "for now" quote, and there he signaled a path of hope. In that sense, the responsibility of the historical figure of Bolivar and the "for now" had an impact on national public opinion.
The "for now" emblematic expression of Commander Hugo Chavez, more than a defeat, it is taken as an example to form a better society. Despite, they say, the blockade and sabotage by the U.S. This is how the Chavismo in Venezuela interprets it.
TeleSUR, Caracas.
We'll take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Peru's President Pedro Castillo announced that he has decided to recompose his cabinet, which means the departure of the repudiated new Prime Minister Héctor Valer Pinto. Castillo dumped his Prime Minister Héctor Valer Pinto on Friday, just 3 days after appointing him amid outrage over revelations he was accused of domestic violence in 2016. The opposition and even some cabinet ministers were up in arms about Valer Pinto's presence in the government. When the president names a new cabinet, it will be his fourth since taking power 6 months ago. Today, the United States decided to lift some of the sanctions against Iran to facilitate the negotiation of the new nuclear pact in Vienna. That is, actually on Friday, Joe Biden's administration reinstated some sanctions exemptions for Iran's atomic program. This decision aimed to ensure compliance with nuclear commitments as stakeholders entered the final weeks of negotiations. This move allowed foreign countries and companies to work on civilian projects at Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant, its Iraq heavy water plant, and Tehran's research reactor. It also lifted the threat of sanctions against foreign countries and companies in Russia, China, and Europe that had been cooperating with the non-military parts of Iran's nuclear program under the terms of the 2015 deal known as the Joint comprehensive plan of action. Brazil's justice system has admitted that the impeachment of former President Dilma Rousseff in 2016 was a product of a legal farce. Dilma Rousseff was removed from the presidency of Brazil, a symbolic gesture that was accompanied by the applause and singing of the national anthem by part of the 81 members of the Senate back then. The final vote of the impeachment process had the result that many anticipated when, on 12th May, the upper house of Congress decided to suspend Rousseff from her functions, a technique of law for which, however, had been used by all the presidents of Brazil's young democracy without, until then, generating any kind of conflict with the legislative branch. Now, Costa Rica is just 24 hours shy of the opening of the polling stations on Sunday. Citizens define their preferences. This Sunday, February 6th, presidential and legislative elections still take place, and candidates will be called to the polls to elect the president and the 57 members of Congress for the period of 2022-2026. Faced with the impossibility of holding massive events due to COVID-19, candidates have opted for small activities in communities and promoting themselves on billboards, highways, or on television ads and social networks. The 25 presidential candidates of Costa Rica are trying to present their proposals in an environment that warmed up a month before elections. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin met in Beijing ahead of the official opening of the Winter Olympics in the Chinese capital. In a joint statement, the two leaders reaffirmed their support for each other's foreign policy, while they also agreed on wider security issues. Both expressed concern over the AUKUS defense alliance, which includes Australia, United Kingdom, and the United States. Both heads of state also discussed a variety of issues, including trade and business deals, cooperation, lunar exploration, and plans to create financial mechanisms to offset the negative impact of unilateral sanctions. Russian leader attended the opening ceremony of the 2022 Winter Games, joining dozens of foreign dignitaries, including other presidents. Both heads of state backed a joint call for NATO to halt its plans for further expansion and avoid the continuation of the Cold War mentality. Russian authorities denounced a strategy of information manipulation by Western powers to reinforce the version of an alleged military attack by Moscow on Ukraine. The Kremlin issued the alert after the United States government and the U.S. media claimed that Russia would broadcast a video of an alleged aggression by Ukraine against Russian territory to justify its attack on the neighboring nation. The Russian executive condemned the accusations, although he assured that this strategy promoted by the White House is not new, and recalled that this type of maneuver has been used by the United States in the past to justify its military invasions of other countries. On that topic, more United States troops were deployed to Poland as the U.S. plans to move soldiers to Eastern Europe. The head of the Polish National State Bureau informed that the U.S. deployed 2,500 more troops to Poland as it transfers soldiers to Eastern Europe. Presently, there are around 5,000 U.S. troops currently stationed in Poland, and more troops are expected to reach the country soon. According to Pavel Solach, head of the country's National State Bureau, the nation is dependent on U.S. soldiers, and negotiations were held to plan for the development of a mechanism to deploy a significant amount of troops if the need arises. We'll take a final short break now. Join us again after this. Hi, welcome back from the South. The 35th Summit of the African Union began this Saturday in Addis Ababa, the capital city of Ethiopia, under the theme Developing Resilience and Nutrition in Africa, Enhancing Human Capital, Social and Economic Development. It will be the first face-to-face meeting of the conclave after 2 years of the pandemic. The agenda of the meeting includes issues related to peace and the economic growth in the continent, in addition to food security. One of the most important objectives is to agree on a sustainable response to the impact of the disease in the region based on an increased access to vaccines. The socio-economic consequences of the pandemic, the war in northern Ethiopia, tensions between Morocco and Algeria, instabilities in Chad, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, and Sudan, forced displacements, and the effects of climate change will also be on the agenda. One of the high points of the meeting is expected to be the questioning of the African Union's link with Israel. The Economic Community of West African States decided to send a stabilization force to help settle the security situation in Guinea-Bissau after Tuesday's failed coup. ECOWAS Commission President Jean-Claude Castillo said at a press briefing after an extraordinary summit of the Authority of ECOWAS heads of state and government that the regional bloc has decided to offer military support to Guinea-Bissau to secure its democracy and sustain peace and security in the country. Apart from the situation in Guinea-Bissau, the meeting will also assess the situation in Burkina Faso, Guinea-Conakry, and Mali. The mission to be deployed to Guinea-Bissau, composed of military and police, will be deployed from Gambia, where a stationary force of the organization has been located since elections that removed Yahya Jammeh from power in 2017. The government of Guinea-Bissau confirmed 11 people died during the failed coup attempt. Nigeria's Minister of Environment announced today an investigation into the oil vessel explosion at the Ukpokiti terminal of the Sheba Exploration and Production Company. The Minister of Environment, Sharon Ikiazor, announced on Twitter that an investigation will be launched into a probe into a blaze caused by an explosion on an oil storage vessel, sparking fears of an environmental disaster off Nigeria's southern Delta state. Since the 1970s, that region has accounted for an overwhelming majority of Nigeria's earnings. However, it continues to suffer the multiplier effect of decades of environmental degradation, which has eroded livelihoods and deprived residents of basic essentials such as access to clean drinking water. The area's mangroves and swamps have become uninhabitable for many species, and the average human life expectancy is also 10 years lower in the Delta than elsewhere in Nigeria. And on Thursday, the Spanish oil company Repsol promised to finish in March with the cleanup of the central coast of Peru affected by a spill of almost 12,000 barrels of crude oil into the sea on January 15, 2009. The spill, described as an ecological disaster by the Peruvian government, occurred while the tanker Maridoricum was unloading at Repsol's refinery 30 kilometers north of Lima. The black slake of crude oil was swept northward by ocean currents up to 140 kilometers. According to the prosecutor's office, it caused the death of an undetermined number of fish, birds, and marine mammals. It also left hundreds of artisanal fishermen and beach traders unable to work. The Peruvian government ordered Repsol to halt the loading and unloading of hydrocarbons on ships in that country, a measure the company disapproved of and warned that it could cause fuel shortages in the domestic market. United Nations warned of significant impact as a new cyclone arrived in Madagascar. Cyclone Batsirai is expected to make landfall on the east coast of Madagascar on Saturday morning after passing through Mauritius.
And our humanitarian partners are ramping up preparedness efforts in anticipation of tropical cyclone Batsirai, which is expected to make landfall in Madagascar over the weekend after having passed through Mauritius. We anticipate a significant humanitarian impact in Madagascar, including in areas that are still recovering from Tropical Storm Anna in late January. Madagascar was already hit by Tropical Storm Anna, which brought winds, heavy rains, destruction, and loss of life. More than 130,000 people were affected across Madagascar, including over 70,000 people who were displaced. At least 58 people have died, almost all of them in the capital, where traditional houses collapsed and others were swept away by landslides.
And in Ecuador, specialized brigades and authorities at Ground Zero assess the impact of the landslide on one of the poorest neighborhoods of the capital city of Quito. In the meantime, humanitarian aid and solidarity with those affected is notorious. Our correspondent, Henry Villajo, has a report.
Work between volunteers, elements of the armed forces, and members of different public institutions does not stop. Here we coordinate and classify the food kits to be sent to different parts of the area affected by the mudslide.
What we have here is a fixed space for perishable food. Our role as a standpoint is to feed workers. We are municipal, provincial, national government. It doesn't matter.
Human Chains spread donations among the homeless and people who lost all their belongings. As you can see, people are very solidary. You cannot imagine the help they have given us in this tragedy so hard that we're going through. Such is life, and we are very grateful to all these people.
All our belongings. My daughter-in-law's little house. They saw it's gone. Everything has been lost. Everything from my children. Mine too. I had some pigs down there. All is gone. It is all empty. Thank God we are all fine.
The human resource deployed in this sector has also increased, exceeding 3,700 specialized and volunteer elements. The manual work in the search for more victims and missing persons is meticulous. It has been 3 days since a flood devastated this sector. Here, a specialized unit continue with the removal of debris, what remains of a sports court where dozens of people were presumably playing a volleyball final. The monitoring of the streams of the protective forest adjacent to this sector is permanent to avoid a new collapse. Now, only a bitter memory remains of places like this one. Bad, the misfortune that hit us when we least expected. The water came down and they were gone. Those who ran to the sides were saved. Others were swept away by the flood. Here we used to gather on Sundays to watch the volleyball games. An exclusion area has been created in this sector, which is controlled by security agents such as the police and the armed forces.
We've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.